Parshas Toldos describes, among other things, the purchase of the Bechorah, the right of the firstborn, from Esav by Yaakov. And I'd like to focus on 3 verses. They are all in Perek Chaf Hey, that's 25, chapter 25. And these are verses 32, 33, and 34, mainly 32 and 34, which is Lamed Beis and Lamed Daled. So the Torah describes the conversation, the dialogue between Esav and Yaakov. And Esav comes in from a day of hunting, and Yaakov is cooking lentil soup. And Yaakov says, "Sell me your Bechorah." Esav asks for food. He says, I'm tired. He says, "Haliteni nomina doma doma." So, pour for me from this red stuff that you've got there. And Yaakov responds and he says, "Michra kayom es Bechoras chali." Sell me, like the day, your Bechorah, your right of the firstborn. Okay, now that's before Lamed Beis. Now Lamed Beis, 32. Vayomer Esav. And Esav says, "Hinei anochi holech lamus." I am going to die. V'lama ze li Bechorah. What do I need the birthright for? We're going to get into the specific translations of that phrase, but that's basically it. I'm going to die. What do I need the Bechorah for? And Yaakov says, "Swear to me." Hishav ali kayom vayishav alo vayimkos Bechorah sol Yaakov. So in the next verse, which is 33, Lamed Gimel, they do the deal. And then the follow-up is in Pasuk Lamed Daled, which is 34, and it says, "V'Yaakov nasan le'esav lechem u'zid adoshim vayochal vayesht." And Yaakov gave bread and lentil soup to Esav, and he ate and he drank. Vayokam vayelach, and he got up and he went. Vayivez Esav es Bechorah, and Esav scorned the birthright. So we have 2 questions. First of all, let's start with this verse, which is, "And Esav scorned the birthright." It would seem that this is quite out of order. It would appear more natural to say that since Esav scorned or belittled or disparaged or thought low of the Bechorah, of the right of the firstborn, that as a result, he got into this conversation and he got into the transaction, and he says, okay, you would think it would say, "Vayivaz Esav es Bechorah, vayomar hinei anochi holech lamus v'lama ze li Bechorah." Esav diminished the significance of the Bechorah, and therefore he said, "Hinei anochi holech lamus," I'm going to die, what do I need the Bechorah for? Why are these words, this phrase, this perhaps observation, why does it come at the end of this parsha, the end of this passage? And it's the passage, and that's the end of the parak. That's the end of the whole passage, is Vayivez Esav es Bechorah. So that's question number 1. Now we go back to Lamed Beis. Lamed Beis, it says, "Hinei anochi holech lamus." Esav says, "I'm going to die. V'lama ze li Bechorah." What do I need this Bechorah for? So the commentaries ask, there seems to be an extra word here. It could have easily said, "Lama li Bechorah." What do I need the Bechorah for? But that's not what Yaakov says. Yaakov says, "Lama ze li Bechorah." Why? Ze means this. Why this to me do I need? Lama ze li, why is this to me the Bechorah? It's a curious phrasing. It's not unheard of, but this Lama ze li shows up only once or twice in all of Tanakh. So, and each one requires an observation, because there are many expressions that are similar to this. I believe it's the Hak'sav Kabbalah that points out that this phrasing is somewhat unusual. It should have said Lama li Bechorah. So what's the word zeh for? So some of the Forshim say that zeh is a sense of immediacy, which means now. And implicit in this is that Esav, they say, did not value or even believe in anything other than what's going on in this material world right now. In other words, he didn't believe in Olam Haba, didn't believe in the world to come, he didn't believe in nitzchius of the neshama, he didn't believe in the eternality of the eternal nature of the soul. And so he felt, ultimately, the Bechorah, which is the birthright, comes with responsibility. This was still before the class of the Bechorah, of the firstborn, was replaced by the Kohanim after the Chet HaEgel, after the sin of the golden calf. So it was still possible at this point that the Bechorah, those who held the position of the firstborn, would be those who served in the Beis HaMikdash. And it's fraught with risk. You do it wrong, you could have severe punishment. And And the ultimate reward for the Bechorah is really not in this world, it's in the world to come. And the Mefarshim explained that Esav denied the world to come, the whole concept of the world to come. He felt this was it, beginning and end. And so therefore, what does he need? Something whose principal reward is in the world to come. Now Rashi just says on this, Hinei anochi halech lamus, I will die because of the Bechorah. In other words, it's a risky business. So Esav is doing a risk-benefit analysis, and he just doesn't see a benefit. The Midrash, on the other hand, says, Midrash Agada says, Hinei anochi halech lamus v'lama zeh li bechorah. What do I need this Bechorah for? And the Midrash says, Melamed shekafar ba'ikar. Teaches us that Esav was kofar ba'ikar. Now, we typically understand kofar ba'ikar as meaning he denied that which is most essential, which means God. He denied God's existence. Well, how is that implicit? How is that signaled by lama zeh li? And the Mefarshim explain, the commentaries explain, that the word zeh is like zeh keli ve'anvehu. This is an allusion to the phrase that the children of Israel used, the exclamation, when they felt the immediate presence of God. And they said, Zeh keli, this is my God, and I will glorify him. And according to the Midrash, they pointed, there was such a sense of immediacy that they pointed and said, Zeh keli, this is my God. So the Zeh is an allusion to the existence of the Almighty. And the Mefarshim, the Midrash, says that Esav was kofer be'ikr. He denied the ikr, the essence, the essential, which we understand to be God. Well, that poses a problem. How can you refer with a sense of immediacy to God and deny God at the same time? Zeh keli, or lama zeh li, if you're using the sense of the word zeh with a sense of immediacy, how can one deny the existence of that which you identify as immediate, as apparent, as in front of you? So I heard from Rabbi Simcha Bakst, I forget in whose name he said it, that what Esav was doing is saying, Lama zeh li. He was setting up himself as the standard. The standard isn't what does God want of me, but rather what do I want of God? Lama zeh li. And if he is imposing this burden of the Bechorah, I don't want it, because it doesn't work for me. And if you view the language of the Midrash in that light, what the Midrash is saying is, Melamed shekafar ba'ikar. It's not an allusion to his denying God, but rather, literally, ikar means the essential or the essence. Esav was denying the essence, meaning he was denying that God whose existence he recognized, but he was denying that God's existence is the most important thing, and God's will is the most important thing. But rather, he interposes himself as the ikar. Esav says, Lama zeh li, what good is this for me? Because I am the standard of behavior. Now, if we follow this along, and we say, Vayivaz Esav es habechorah, Esav denied or disgraced, scorned the birthright. It happened afterwards because what went on in this transaction? Well, Esav said, you know what, I don't need it, I don't want it, you can have it. And then to justify himself afterwards, he said, you know what, the Bechorah is nothing. It's not worth anything. And so it was after the fact, in order to give himself support, in order to avoid what might be characterized as cognitive dissonance, as some kind of pain and anguish for his having sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. He says, the birthright wasn't worth anything. And both of these observations reflect phenomenon in how we think and how we practice our ideals. First of all, Esav sets himself up as the standard. And once a person sets himself up as the standard, then there is no standard. Because whatever you want is the current standard. Your mood changes. You want something else. The standard changes. People who understand the position that the Almighty occupies in this world, which is the ikar, the essence of existence is the Almighty, we recognize that sometimes we have to sacrifice in order to fulfill God's will. We also see that once a person gets locked into a position, he will do whatever he needs to make sure that, at least in his own mind, and likely in an attempt to create an impression in the minds of others, he will scorn that which ought not be scorned. He will scorn that which is genuinely important. These are devices for escaping responsibility. Number one, set myself up as the standard. Number two, I scorn, I mock the genuine standards. And we see that frequently people will adopt a position, and then they will even distort the Torah and represent that the Torah supports that position, not because of a dispassionate, intellectually honest review of the sources in the Torah and then coming to a conclusion. Conclusion might not be obvious, it might be obvious. But the way one arrives at the truth is by gathering the evidence of what does the Torah say and then arriving at a conclusion. On the other hand, frequently we see that people take a position and then their view of the Torah is distorted because it's agenda-driven. If it supports my view, if it's lama zeh li, then I accept it. And if not, then vayivez Esav esabchora, then we diminish its significance, even though its significance is actually quite profound. The Torah expects us to be intellectually honest. The Torah expects us to be sincere. And the Torah expects us to come to the conclusions of truth and not to let our conclusions drive our perception of the truth. Have a good Shabbos.